Together and welcome David to the stage. That would be marvellous. Thank you.
Hi everyone. It's a pleasure to be here, and thanks Chris for the opportunity. So, as Chris was saying, I'm working over in Andrade now, and my whole career has been in technology. So I studied computer science in Portugal and then in the UK. I started working as a developer and started moving into more leadership focused positions, and that is what I'm going to talk about today. It's about my experience on actually moving through different positions and on how I've dealt with different teams and different managers and different colleagues in general. So let me start by telling you a story that happened just a couple of months ago. I met with an ex-colleague of mine that is now VP of engineering at a different company. And just catching up on a Friday evening in London, having a drink, and we started obviously checking if everything was okay and moved on to the classic talking about our jobs. So when we started talking about our jobs, I couldn't help but showing you this. You can't quite see it, but these are the Nerf guns we have in our office. So we were having some fun on Friday afternoon. We usually do that after 4 p.m. just to, blow some steam. And that's our quote of the day board that actually says, update the quote of the day because I told you so, by David. Because I asked one of the guys to update the quote of the day. So we start talking about this and I start telling him, probably bragging a bit on how happy I was with the environment we have in the office right now and with the different teams we have there. He came up with a question that caught me a bit off guard. So he basically asked me, how do you do it? What's the secret? I think I thought what he meant, but I wasn't quite sure, so I was like, okay, can you elaborate a bit on that? And he went on to ask me, how can you create these environments? How do you go about creating the environment where you're happy with your teams, they're happy working there, and you seem to deliver business results? So I got a pen and a piece of paper, somebody else too. I wrote down 2 things. I gave him the piece of paper and I said, go back to work on Monday and start doing these things with your teams, and you'll see the difference. And fair enough, catching up with him just a few days ago, everything seems to have changed. They're happier now, he's happier, and they seem to be delivering more software than ever. Pretty impressive stuff, right? But you can't wait to know what is in that piece of paper. Yeah, that's not exactly how it went down. So my friend did ask me that question, and we went on discussing it for 2 or 3 hours basically until we went home. And the reason for that is because there isn't an easy answer. There isn't an easy answer to create great teams and great working environments and make sure that people progress and that we deliver amazing results. It's a complex subject that depends on the business you're operating in, the organization itself, it depends on the people you have around you, your bosses, it depends on everything. So there isn't a secret sauce that you can use and just transform everything and make sure that everything just works. If you think about it, we live in a fast-paced and in many ways technology-driven world. We all have our iPhones, iPads, we all have loads of different apps, and the fact that we're here today is proof of exactly that. Tech jobs these days are everywhere. If you look at, especially at places like London and San Francisco, there's new jobs advertised every day. Salaries keep going up, the market is booming all the time. I've been in this country for 6 years and it's been a constant growth on technology jobs and new startups and everything. What this means is that it kind of starts to feel like it's a bit of a lost cause for leadership. So how can you plan, 10 years ahead or 5 years, maybe 3 years, if it's very likely that your staff turnover is going to be very high, that your key players are probably going to leave within 1, maybe 2, 3 years. To be honest, most people these days, especially in the younger generations, they sign a new contract, and I speak for myself, I've done it in the past. I'm signing a new contract and I'm already thinking, okay, maybe I'll stay here for a year or 2, see how it goes, but I'll likely move somewhere else and get a better job title maybe, or get a pay rise. So how can we plan for this? If people are already in that mindset before they even join the organization. And again, it sounds a bit like a lost cause, but as I progressed in my career, I don't think it is anymore. I just think this means that businesses and leadership within those businesses need to up their game. We need to understand that the game has changed. This is not, we're not 100 years ago or 20 years ago where people would just stay 20, 30 years in the same organization. My parents did that. My dad worked for the same insurance company for 30 years. I won't do that. I haven't done it so far, and I'm surely not planning, I don't plan doing it in the future. So this presents a big challenge for leadership, and I think there's many things businesses can do, and one of them, especially if you work in a big organization, that I think you should start doing, I've seen it in a few, is stop calling people resources. We've all seen the classic managers that go around and have, two spreadsheets with 200 resources on them, maybe 10 teams, I don't know, whatever it's called, depends on the organization, and they just think, well, I can get rid of 5, or maybe my budget actually allows me to hire another 10. They just go on like this. The message is sent to the people actually doing the work are awful. So I'm just another number on a spreadsheet. These guys don't even know my name. And that just creates an environment where obviously people will want to move on. People will feel like they're just there, well, to be another one, to be another number on that spreadsheet. So what we need to start doing is actually understanding individuals and caring about them, and actually understanding that everyone is different, that every person in our teams and in our organizations have different career plans. Sorry. Another interesting concept that comes with this is the concept of team. If you look around organizations, certainly the ones I've worked on, there's teams everywhere. There's fancy leadership teams, there's agile teams, there's development teams and operations teams and all sorts of stuff. But the reality is that if you look into it, they're not real teams, are they? They're just groups of people, which is very different from real teams. Groups of people that were probably just brought together to try and do something. You throw some people together, maybe give them a team name, maybe they get to choose if they're lucky, and create a scrap group, give them a big tech spec, and just hope for the best. And then, through a year later or 6 months, you're surprised that it probably didn't work. Well, I don't know why it didn't work. It works at Facebook and Amazon and all big companies. Why does it not work here? We pay you enough money to just get on with it, right? Well, the reason why in most cases it doesn't work, and those teams or those products fail, is because it requires a lot more to create a team than just throwing a few people together. It requires, creating the proper environment, giving to people in the team the conditions and everything they need to know each other, to actually interact and create relationships and bonds that allow them to actually deliver towards a common goal. So being a proper team is being in a place where you can hold, your team, your colleagues accountable for their work, and at the same time they can hold you accountable for it. Having that openness and that, that relationship that makes it easier for everyone. So people actually know what they're there for, actually working probably, towards a common goal. I'll give you an example from one of my previous jobs. We had 2 in-house software development teams, each running its own product, and we needed to basically speed up delivery. So we looked at different options, and the option that seemed more sensible at the time was to use an offshore company to speed up delivery. There was a company in another country in Europe. Basically, we came up with a 1-to-1 ratio. So 1 in-house team working with a 1 offshore team, so we could still keep the knowledge in-house and all that, and off we went, continuing working on the projects. What I realized a couple of months into that was that from those 2 different groups of teams, 1 in-house and 1 outsourced, one of them was performing a lot better than the other one. So I started looking into it a bit deeper because obviously, I was interested in both products. And as I looked into it, the group that wasn't performing as well, you could see that there was the in-house team would basically review and approve everything that the offshore team was doing. So pretty much a command and control structure. We are your client, you work for us, you'll tell exactly what, you'll do exactly what we tell you to do. Communication in that case was mainly around Skype, where it's very easy to forget that's actually a person on the other side, and regular conference calls for demos and things like that. While if you look into the other team, however, it was very different. They had a working agreement that both teams came up with themselves, which was basically a set of rules on how they actually work together. It wasn't imposed by management, they came up with it. So it meant that both sides had a say on how they would actually work. There wasn't this command and control structure. Communication wasn't just Skype and conference calls, there were regular visits between both sides. And in those visits, it wasn't just about, co-location for a few days. every time that happened, there would be either dinner out with the team, or maybe they would go bowling, or anything like that. Things outside work that would actually help them create relationships. So that meant that it felt pretty much like one big team delivering one software product instead of two separate teams where one works for the other. And the results were very different from the previous example. So creating these relationships and creating this, allowing people to actually raise their hand and say, sorry guys, I know it kind of feels like it's your project, but probably we shouldn't do this. Makes a huge difference in the end result. This is a concept I came across a couple months ago, and I don't know if you can read it, but it says the opposite of job dissatisfaction is not job satisfaction, but no job dissatisfaction. This might take a few seconds to process, but basically what this means is that what makes you unhappy at work is not necessarily the same thing that makes you happy. So if you think about things like company bureaucracy, a crappy office that looks like there's no conditions to actually do great work, or even the classic salary issue, those are things that they're not true motivators. What they are things that, when not taken care of, they will make people upset. They will make people, feel bad about it. How many times have you gone home in your career upset because, there's just too much bureaucracy to actually resolve something that feels like common sense at work? Certainly happened to me many times, especially with developers unblocking accounts and giving permissions and all sorts of restrictions that most people don't really understand. And the salary is the same thing. I'm not talking about buying people off and just go around throwing bonus. No, I'm talking about paying people enough so they don't have to worry about it. Obviously, if they're not paid according to market rate, they will get upset about it. Just pay them enough so they don't have to worry. And the role of leadership here is basically trying to remove these things, trying to make sure that the teams and the individuals in those teams are in a position where they don't have to worry. And fair enough, if you work in a big organization, it will be difficult to remove all of these. It will be difficult to actually influence the entire organization, even if you're at the C-level, to remove all of this stuff, because you're going to get into conflicts. But if people in your teams and people inside those teams, if you're managing a team of managers, see that you all put the efforts to minimize the impact, to actually reduce the impact that these things have. Maybe I can't give you a pay rise today, but in the next rises that we do, you'll be on the top of my list. Or maybe I can't, remove service desk, for example. You shouldn't anyway, but I can, you can see me and I can push for it if it gets stuck. And by doing that, what leaders are doing is they're not only helping their staff to forget about those things, they're gaining their respect. Because people understand that you care about them, that you're actually putting in your time and your efforts to help them out, so they don't get frustrated and get in a room where you're going to kick off a new project, and they're already upset because they've been 2 hours dealing with something like this. And that's very important, because once you've done that, you can move on to the good stuff. You can move on. You no longer start from a negative starting point. You start from a neutral zone, which is where you want to be. We're all motivated beings. We all want to somehow get up in the morning and go and do stuff, whatever that is. Probably different for all of us. What great leaders do these days is not so much motivating people, it's inspiring them by creating a vision, a sense of common purpose, and with their work ethic. And at the same time, great employees inspire leaders by doing great work. It's literally a two-way street. And many people in leadership positions struggle to see this, struggle to actually put in the time and the effort to create this sense of common purpose and vision, and actually helping other people grow. So, this is a quote, one of the best ones we had in the office recently. I'll read it out for you. 3 men were laying bricks. The first was asked, "What are you doing?" And he answered, "Laying some bricks." The second one was asked, "What are you working for?" And he answered, $5 a day. The third man was asked, "What are you doing?" And he answered, "I'm helping to build a great cathedral." What kind of man are you? Which situation is yours? Maybe you've been through I've certainly been through 3 different stages. At some points I was like, yeah, I'm just here doing some code and it's fine. Other times, well, I'm kind of doing it for the money because I need the money. And luckily now, I feel at least that I'm in a point where I'm actually building something that's a lot bigger than myself and even my teams. And that makes me go to work every morning and actually be motivated by it. So take the time to help your employees actually grow. Take the time to look after them. Because suddenly you'll be in a position where you're not just working on this new iPhone app that the team doesn't really care about, probably doesn't even know what it is for. They will tell you that they're actually working on the best app in the world. And they'll be home at night, probably with their phone in their hand, testing it and making sure it's fine. And that's a completely different mindset. Two completely different things that will lead you with the same team and the same budgets and everything to completely different results. So go ahead, help your people grow. Take the time to actually understand each individual. And if you maybe way too up the ladder and you feel like, oh, I can't look after everyone, well, maybe look after the people that are around you. And those people, and make sure that they understand how important this is and they can look after the people that are around them. This is very important. In most cases, if you think about it, in most companies, we're reasonably good at helping people develop technical skills, right? Sometimes you send them off to a course for 2 days and we can take the hit on the budget and even the time off. We feel like, yeah, that'll keep them happy for the rest of the year. It's a nice course, we'll get a certificate out of it maybe. That's nothing of what I'm talking about. I'm talking about actually understanding individuals at a point where you can see career progression from their shoes, not yours. Because although people might be in the same position in the organization, they will want to have different progressions. There's people that are on the technical side and they want to move on to the business side. And the other way around. I've been in many situations where people from the business actually ask, okay, can I start doing some development? Can you guys spend some time and help me out? We have 100 developers. Can you help out? Yeah, sure. And it's probably their manager or their team or anyone around them responsibility to actually help them out going to that path. And leadership here is about creating those conditions that allow people to actually progress. And that's key. It's understanding each person to a point, especially the people that directly interact with you every day, up to a point where you know whether they're in a good or a bad mood. Don't just go into the kitchen on a Monday morning and ask them how was your weekend while you're doing your coffee and then run away to your meeting halfway through the answer. That's worse than not asking anything. If you're going to ask them how was their weekend or whatever you're going to say, make sure you're paying attention. Make sure they know you're paying attention and that you actually care about the answer. Because otherwise they will see it. It's very easy for us to actually see, oh yeah, he's just asking me that because he probably read it in a book. He doesn't really care about me. I know that. And that's worse than actually not having any interaction at all, because it goes back to a much more negative place. So go ahead, create an excellence mindset. Transform your teams or help them by creating new teams, whatever it is that you have to do in your organization to create an excellence mindset, where failure is not good and not what you're aiming for, but is accepted. Because great leaders might actually let you fail without being a failure. When was the last time that you said to someone in your team or even the entire team, they screwed up massively and you said, good job, I'm really happy with your efforts, and you meant it? Have you done that? Have you ever been in a position where you could? Because that just lifts their morale from like down here to the top of the world. It's like saying to them, you're the best developer in the world, whatever it is that they do. And that changes everything. This is not easy or straightforward stuff. Creating these mindsets and actually aiming for excellence and looking after people and the groups as a whole is very difficult, and it takes a lot of time. But if leadership within the organizations actually cares enough to help their people grow, to help their teams create this environment where they aim for excellence, then they'll be in the correct path. So if I'll leave you with just one thing today, let it be this. As leaders, be team players, and as team players, let's be leaders. Thank you.